Welcome to another FPL video, specifically a transfer tips where I talk about the players to buy, hold, sell and skip. Let me know if you would change anything in this video and be sure to drop this a like and let's try to get this to over 300 and we're very close to 15,000 subscribers. We're literally only 100 away at the time of this recording. And also speaking of that, this video is recorded before the Leicester versus Nottingham Forest game, so bear that in mind with all the ranks and stuff on the left hand side of your screen. But let's get straight into this video. Perhaps the area I'm most concerned about or unsure of is the Newcastle strikers, and if Mitrovic is indeed ruled out later this week, and be sure to wait, and that's the kind of biggest advice I would give to everyone watching this video. Wait for the press conferences. We have a lot of Champions League and Europa League games in midweek, so don't make early transfers if possible. But Callum Wilson and Isak is going to be a bit of a tricky situation, and it'll be interesting to see what Newcastle do going forward. Will they play both of them up front at some point when Isak is fully fit? And he's already been running in the grass, as Eddie Howe said, so maybe he's not going to be out for up to a month, as some reports initially suggested. But I think Callum Wilson, in the meantime, is a really good replacement for Mitrovic if Mitrovic is indeed injured. So that's pretty much the main reason why I would buy Callum Wilson. And he's a differential. He's got some very good underlying numbers. And the same goes for Isak. So whoever plays up front for Newcastle is going to get some good chance creation. And in the case of Wilson especially, he's a very good finisher. But my main concern with him is that he's injury prone. And also, I'm not too sure how Newcastle will kind of deal with the arrival and return of Isak and what that will mean for Callum Wilson going forward. Could there be rotation between the two? But if, like I said, Mitrovic is injured, you need a striker around that price, I would actually rather go to Callum Wilson than Dominic Solanke. There are no doubts about this transfer. I think Trossard is a fantastic buy, and if you're looking for a Martinelli replacement, look no further. And a lot of people are also selling Rashford this week. Well, Trossard's your guy. He went up to 6.7 million overnight. He's got some decent underlying numbers, nothing spectacular, but a healthy XG, 6 big chances, and decent shot volume. And you can't ask for that much more from a 6.7 million midfielder. The fixtures are quite mixed, and you still got Man City, Chelsea, and Tottenham in the next 5. But those games against Brentford and Nottingham Forest, he has such a high ceiling, and he's already done it in the big games against Arsenal, against Liverpool, Tottenham. He can do it in all those matches, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he actually gets more double-digit returns over the next 5 game weeks. And honestly, you can't ask for much more. I talked about this in recent weeks as well. I'm not a big fan of McAllister despite him doing so well this season, and you mainly rely on penalties with him. Gross is still a good choice, and I think he could thrive under the new manager as well. But Trossard is the main man, I believe, and he showed against Liverpool. I never expected him to score a hat-trick, and I think he could do more of the same, even against right-backs that aren't Trent Alexander-Arnold. Zaha's featured a lot in these videos, but some people are having second thoughts about him. Chelsea was always going to be difficult, and Crystal Palace tend to struggle against them, but the fixtures now, from Game Week 10 onwards, are fantastic, and that means a double up in Crystal Palace with Zaha, maybe Gaeta in goal, Anderson if he's fit, and also Gay. Having 2 of those players might look really good and a nice way of separating you from the rest of the pack and gaining rank on those around you. But I have to say, Zaha is the go-to Crystal Palace attacker and player overall. He is the one that I would go for. He's got some good underlying numbers, although they're not as impressive as they were in the first 3 or 4 game weeks when he already had, at that point, 5 big chances. So things have definitely slowed down a little bit, but I think they will start to slowly rev up again with those fixtures. And honestly, at that price and below, apart from Trossard and maybe Martinelli, I don't think there's many better. Speak of the devil, Gabriel Martinelli was amazing in the North London derby. Despite only getting 4 points with that yellow card, his overall performance probably deserved much more than that, maybe a double-digit return, and I think he could do a great job even against Liverpool. And then he faces Leeds, where he scored a couple of goals last season in that blank game week. It seems like such a long time ago already. Then he blanks in game week 12, and that is going to be the big concern. But then the fixtures after that, until the World Cup, are very good for Arsenal, and they're top of the league still. They're doing a really good job, and Martinelli is nailed on because Smith-Rowe is out until December. So Martinelli, he's nailed, he's cheap, he's got good underlying numbers, and he just offers insane value. I'm surprised that he started the season at 6 million. He probably should have started at 7 million in retrospect, but there you go. He maybe wasn't that impressive in the last few seasons with his goal contributions, and I think there was definitely something missing from his game. And whilst the goal contributions are nothing special at this point, I still think he's a fantastic player. He's taken his game to another level, and the goals and assists will come. And honestly, I would keep him in most cases. I know some of you want to trim down your Arsenal plus Man City assets in time for Game Week 12, and that's understandable. But I would maybe try to hold on to him for the next 2 game weeks at least. Then you can start to maybe bring him back in after Game Week 12 if you decide to part ways with him. And some people that are watching this video will have maybe a double up in Arsenal midfield of Odegaard. I would rather sell him and maybe someone like Saliba at the back line. But I think Arsenal will score plenty of goals over the next few games. I'm not too sure about clean sheets, but I have to say Martinelli for me is probably Arsenal's best asset apart from Gabriel Jesus. We don't know much about the extent of Mitrovic's injury, so this could change when we get the press conferences later in the week. And if Mitrovic is ruled out, then he is worth selling, and you can go to Callum Wilson as I suggested earlier in this video. But for the time being, there is no rush. Don't make early transfers if you can help it, because we've got the Champions League, Europa Conference League, and also the Europa League itself. So don't make early transfers because you could have other fires to put out as the week progresses. And Mitrovic, if he is fit, I think he's a fantastic option still, despite some blanks recently, and there are other strikers that look much better at this moment in time, but he's still got the underlying numbers, which is still very impressive for a striker who started at 6.5 million, coming off the Championship with maybe a bad history Premier League-wise. Mitrovic is playing for Fulham, of course, who a lot of people did actually expect them to go down this season, and they have definitely punched above their weight. A very big loss against Newcastle at the weekend, but I still think they can turn things around and have a decent mid-table finish potentially, and Mitrovic will be a huge part of it. So honestly, we don't know much about his injury. He's got an ankle/foot injury as it's kind of called at the moment, but he could be available in time for Game Week 10. So wait for the press conferences before making a final decision. But at the time of this recording, I would hold Mitrovic. The same goes for Anderson, who I also have, and I got him in my wildcard team. I think he's the best Crystal Palace defender in isolation, but of course, saving that 0.2 million on Gay might go a long way for you personally. I have to say, though, Joachim Anderson, I don't think it's too serious. Patrick Vieira kind of played down the injury. It's just a niggle problem, I think he described it as. So just keep calm. I would keep Anderson. And honestly, if you've got the squad depth anyway, and he's the only player that you have injured, then you don't really need to be in a rush to sell him regardless. And he could be back in Game Week 11, let's say if he does miss out this weekend. So once again, like with Mitrovic, wait for the press conferences before making a final decision. But I would actually be more inclined to keep Anderson than Mitrovic if both of them were ruled out this weekend, because you can go to more options besides Mitrovic around the same price, or maybe going up a little bit more to Callum Wilson. But with Anderson, there's not that many standout defenders, and it's less of a priority in my opinion. Crystal Palace have some great long-term fixtures, so honestly, I would hold Joachim Anderson, but most importantly, wait for the press conferences. It's going to be a recurring theme. Once again, do not make early transfers. I can't stress that enough. But Isak for me at this moment in time is a sell. And the injury might not be as bad as it once was touted as online, and we just don't know enough about his injury at the moment. And he was looking really impressive in his first few games, but when you look at his haul against Bournemouth, and obviously he scored the penalty and got maximum bonus, but his overall play in that match wasn't that impressive, and I think obviously the penalty did kind of cover the cracks in a way, and I was actually considering talking about selling him at that point, but I still thought he was one of the better forward options at your disposal. But now with Callum Wilson back fit, Isak is struggling with an injury problem, and I think Wilson will start the next few games. That's why I would sell Isak, and I would go to Mitrovic if he's fit. You've got Ivan Toney, you can even go up to Harry Kane potentially, and downgrade one of your midfielders, and then go to someone like Trossard or Foden in the weeks to come. So honestly, I would sell Isak personally, but I don't think it's a priority sell if he's available for the weekend. So that's something else that we need to wait for, have more information, and then we can make a more informed decision. But let me know if you disagree with this one. I wouldn't be surprised if you do, because it might not be the right pick. It's just the gut feeling I have, and also I believe there are better strikers available, assuming that Mitrovic is fit. Another Newcastle attacker with injury problems, but Saint-Maximin is injury prone overall, unfortunately, but he looked electric in the first few games of the season, and his underlying numbers for his price, and considering the number of games and minutes he has played, it's very impressive. But I would sell Saint-Maximin because you have so many options between 6 and 7 million all of a sudden. Rashford is still a good choice. Martinelli for me is probably the best, but you've also got Trossard, who might actually beat Martinelli in terms of the medium price or budget midfielders, so to speak. So I think there are alternatives you can go to. Even Pascal Gross is another one, and Newcastle's fixtures are pretty mixed over the next 5. I still think they can get some good results, score plenty of goals, and do a good job, but I would sell Saint-Maximin, and the only attacker I would consider at this moment in time from Newcastle is Callum Wilson, but more importantly I would go for Trippier, Nick Pope, or even Fabian Schär to cover their backline. The last sell of this video is Martin Odegaard, who has been fantastic for Arsenal this season and all year, to be fair, pulling the strings, making them tick and doing a really good job in all areas of the pitch. But in FPL, I wouldn't consider him. And when you're looking at Arsenal Man City assets, with that blank in Game Week 12, Odegaard is one of the ones I would not have any hesitations about selling. It's a bit different with Saliba, Martinelli, even Gabriel Jesus, and then you have the City players, for example. But with Odegaard, it's a bit easier to sell him in my opinion, and he did get 2 double-digit returns on the bounce, but I don't think it will be that consistent, and he'll be maybe a bit of a streaky player or have big hauls in certain games really, then blank for several matches. He might still have some good performances, but he doesn't get the goals and assists, and then it will happen yet again. So I don't really expect that much consistency. He is a good option, and he is better than I expected, but I would sell him with the Game Week 12 blank in mind, and I think there are better options in the Arsenal midfield and also across the whole squad. You might think I'm an absolute idiot for saying this, but hear me out. Once again, a lot of us will have at least 3 Arsenal plus Man City players, and we've got the blank in 12, and I wouldn't recommend getting so many Man City and Arsenal players right now and then free hitting in Game Week 12, because you can gain more points by saving the free hit for a blank or double game week later on in the season. So if you don't have Foden right now, I would skip him and bring him in potentially ahead of that game against Brighton in Game Week 13, and then he could be arguably the best midfielder around 8 million. I never expected him to score a hat-trick against Man United, and he never scored against the Red Devils before yesterday's match, and honestly, he looked incredible. And look at his stats, 5 goals now and 3 assists in 8 games, and he just scores and assists whenever he gets the minutes. It's as simple as that. He's got good underlying numbers as well, and he's actually probably in my top 3, even possibly top 2 options in the midfield when you're looking besides the kind of premium options of Son, Salah, if you can even put him in the conversation right now, and Kevin De Bruyne, who for me is the absolute best midfielder. But Foden is making a serious case to be the Man City midfielder to go to because of the value, and that makes going for Harry Kane and Haaland viable in the attack. So it's going to be actually a very interesting conversation to go for Foden or Kevin De Bruyne, and it all depends on what you want structurally. So Foden is not a skip forever. Let me make that very clear. It's a skip for now, despite the fact they face Southampton and Liverpool, where he's actually had some joy at Anfield in recent seasons. But I wouldn't go for him if you already have too many Man City and Arsenal players. If you only have 1 or 2 somehow, then fair enough, go for Foden, enjoy the points, but otherwise, just skip and enjoy his points later on in Game Week 13. Trent and Liverpool can come good, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets some returns against Arsenal and even Man City. But at this moment in time, it's too difficult to justify that 7.4 million price tag. It's the same with Salah as well in the midfield, although arguably he's a bit more difficult to justify, you could say. But Liverpool aren't keeping clean sheets. Trent has got 1 goal and 1 assist in 7 games. That looks pretty good, but both of those returns came against Bournemouth, and he has blanked in every single other game, although he was very unlucky not to get clean sheet points against Everton, but that's another matter to really discuss. And really, you look at the underlying numbers, you look at his overall performances, the way he's being targeted on that right-hand side, and I just can't justify spending that much money right now. Things can change in Game Weeks 12 or 13 when a lot of us will be looking to bring in Trent or Salah potentially, maybe even both, but I need to see more from Liverpool first before making that sort of investment. Right now, he's nowhere near that price tag. Maybe FPL were right in the end with the pricing of Trent and Robertson this season, but I would skip him at the moment. The final skip of this video is Salah. Just rewind the clocks maybe a year. Who would have thought I would talk about skipping Salah and Trent? No one. Absolutely nobody. But that is football for you. Things can change so quickly. And Salah is still a good option. Remember, he did get an assist in Game Week 9. But tell that to Salah captainers. Tell that to the owners who put a lot of faith in him. And he just hasn't delivered to the levels he did in the last campaign, especially in the first half where he was absolutely incredible. 2 goals and 4 assists isn't bad. But for Salah standards, it's very underwhelming. He's got some okay underlying numbers. I say okay because normally he's the best in the business. Haaland has kind of ruined the captaincy debate, unfortunately. Imagine if we had Salah from last season as absolute best against Haaland. We would definitely be just tearing our hair out, I think, in terms of the captaincy, with the midfielders having the advantage. But Salah for me right now is a skip. If he shows some form and consistency and Liverpool get slowly back to their best, maybe not to the exact same level as last season, but something akin to that, then I would definitely say, you know what, go for Salah. He would be a great option, especially in Game Week 12 to captain when Haaland is blanking, of course, and then you've got the likes of Son facing Man United. But right now, I have to say, unfortunately, it's a skip for Salah. That just about wraps up this video. If you enjoyed this, be sure to drop it a like. Let's try to get this to as many likes as possible, perhaps 300, and let's try to get to 15,000 subscribers. We are very close to that milestone, so thank you very much for all your support. And if you disagree with any of these, leave it down in the comment section below. I want to see your thoughts. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and also check the links in the description below, including the Patreon, the channel memberships, the Discord server, and the FPL League. So I look forward to seeing you on all of those platforms. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 10 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.